Morning, church. It's another brand new morning, and I'm so glad that I get to spend it with you as I share the Word of God. And I hope that this morning, as we go through our devotion together, that you'll find some kind of special meaning, some kind of special purpose, some kind of message from God that'll help you carry on with the day as you continuously think of Him. With that, let's go ahead and begin. Now, have you guys ever read the book Chicken Soup for the Soul? Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. If you've never heard of it, then it sounds like a kind of a weird book. I actually have a copy of this book at church in my office, and some of you guys have read through it. But basically, it's a book where you find wonderful, inspirational stories after stories that are meant to bring you peace and a little sense of comfort. Now, the story behind this book, it goes back to 1993, where there were two motivational speakers by the name of Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen. And they had a bunch of inspirational stories about themselves and things that they had experienced. Now, every time they would have their kind of motivational speeches and whatnot, people would ask if they had a book or if they had these stories where they could read them again. And so basically, they decided, and they were inspired, to put together 101 different stories that they had shared in some of their speeches. And then they decided to name this collection of stories Chicken Soup for the Soul, because they wanted it to soothe and provide comfort, just like their grandmother's cooking. Now, when you guys get sick, maybe you've eaten a bowl of chicken noodle soup. And yeah, it's delicious. But also, if you didn't know, chicken noodle soup can actually help clear nasal congestions and help, with cold symptoms that we may have. So yeah, it's great and delicious, but there's some healing powers found in it, right? Like, think about the carrots, onions, and celery, the vegetables in the soup that used to help provide strength for your immune system, help you fight off viruses, and help with speedy recovery. The chicken broth gives hydration and it can help clear with any nasal congestions. And the chicken, if you eat chicken, supports your immune system, and noodles just help you feel full and satisfied. So it's a pretty amazing soup. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't remember eating a lot of chicken noodle soup when I was growing up, or at least I don't remember the times that I did. But whenever I was sick at home, growing up in a Korean household, my mother or sometimes my grandmother would cook me a nice warm bowl of the Korean version of chicken noodle soup, which is 콩나물국, right? Or in English, we call it bean sprout soup. Now, aside from the healing properties and the love that your parents put into it when they prepare the soup for you, eating this kind of soup, especially when you're sick, it makes you feel better, right? It gives you energy, it soothes you, it comforts you, right? Now, anytime I get sick, sometimes I think of the food that my mom cooks for me and that nice warm bowl of bean sprout soup. Sometimes I'll cook it for myself, just for good times, and maybe I'll have a bowl of chicken noodle soup as well. But every time I do, it warms me up, it helps me feel better, and it gives me life. Now, as we continue our journey through the letters of Paul, and in this letter to the church of Thessalonica, remember what has happened so far, right? It's the first church that Paul has worked with and kind of started. He was only there for a few weeks and then eventually had to get ran out, and now he's worried sick for them, right? He doesn't know what's happening to them, and he doesn't know what has happened. But he sends Timothy to go check up on them. So he's gone, and now he's come back. But he's come back with a great report that they're doing fantastic. And now Paul is writing this letter with joy and happiness. And we evidently see this happiness found here. Look at 1 Thessalonians 3, verse 6 to 8. It says, "But Timothy has just now come to us from you and has brought good news about your faith and love. He has told us that you always have pleasant memories of us and that you long to see us, just as we also long to see you. Therefore, brothers and sisters, in all our distress and persecution, we were encouraged about you because of your faith. For now we really live, since you are standing firm in the Lord." Man, what a sigh of relief for Paul, right? This young church group, it's thriving, right? They're talking the walk, they're walking the talk, they're living the gospel message. They didn't just hear the gospel message, they listened and they welcomed it into their hearts and into their lives. And Paul is so thankful that they're doing amazingly well. He's so thankful that he uses this expression in verse 8. He says, "For now we really live," right? Before he even heard the news, remember, Paul was worried sick, right? Just like a parent is worried for their child when they're not feeling well, when they're sick, Paul was so concerned for this small church. Now, you see, when Timothy brought back word to Paul that they were doing great, they were growing in love and faith, and they said that they had missed Paul, Paul says that, hey, despite the distress that we were in, despite the persecution that we were facing, there was encouragement found in their story, right? Kind of like chicken soup for the soul. Just as we read inspirational stories and these stories that make us feel good and soothe us and comfort us, Paul, he hears great news and inspirational stories about this young church, or in other words, Paul hears that this testimony of this church gives him encouragement. It soothes and comforts him when he was feeling worried and concerned. You see, church, testimonies are really powerful, and I love hearing great testimonies. You see, we all have testimonies. Some of us already know what our story is, but some of us might not know, and that's totally fine. So this morning, I want to challenge you to think about your story with Jesus. Think about how Jesus has been a part of your journey, right? And write down your testimony. For starters, if you don't know where to begin, there's a really simple format that I want to encourage you to think about. Start with your BC, right? Your before Christ moment. Think about what life was like before you really met Jesus. How did you live? How did you think? What was life like for you without him? Then talk about your AC, not your air conditioning, but your after Christ moment. Now that you have a life with Jesus, now that you have met Jesus, how's life now? What's different? What's new? What's amazing in your life with him? So remember this, just like a warm bowl of chicken soup can soothe the sick body, a God-filled testimony can bring encouragement to the broken and worried soul.